There's a great daily science podcast on NPR that's called Shortwave. Anyone a Shortwave fan? Every so often, they do an episode focused on animals. And they specifically try to do episodes about animals that are misunderstood, animals that get a bad rap, animals that most of us try to spend our lives trying to avoid. Spiders, bats, rats, the kind of animals that humans have given a pretty bad reputation. But through these episodes, you learn quite a lot, and you learn to see these animals from a different perspective. Take spiders, for example. Did you know that spiders live year-round on Mount Everest? There are also spiders that spend part of their lives underwater by creating little air domes around themselves, carrying their own oxygen supply as they walk along the bottom of ponds. There are spiders that can sense the Earth's electric field and use it to launch themselves hundreds, even thousands of kilometers through the air. And there are spiders that gather seaweed and kelp into little rafts and drift across the ocean. Every time I listen to one of these episodes, I find myself with the same thought. Man, human beings really need to be humbled every once in a while. We love to play the B'Tselem Elohim card. We were created in the image of God. Therefore, we're the smartest creatures, the most sophisticated creatures, the pinnacle of creation. I was reminded of that tension recently while watching Steven Spielberg's new film, Disclosure Day. One character worries that if humanity were ever to discover intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, people would lose their faith because human beings would no longer be God's greatest creation. But a nun gently reminds her that Genesis doesn't actually say that. It says that human beings are created in God's image and given dominion over life on earth. It never claims that we are the pinnacle of everything God has created. It's a subtle but important distinction. Because then a spider casually sails across the oceans on a homemade boat and reminds us that being created in God's image does not mean we are better than the rest of creation. It means that we have a particular role within it. In fact, there's a midrash that asks why humanity was created last of all the living beings. You might think perhaps God was saving the best for last. But that's not the answer the rabbis give us. The rabbis say, to teach them humility. For if they are overbearing, let them remember that the little fly preceded them in the order of creation. That lesson sits right at the heart of this week's Torah portion. Balak, the king of Moab, hires the famous sorcerer Balaam to curse the Israelites. As Balaam rides towards the Israelite camp, something strange happens. His donkey suddenly stops. 3 times she refuses to continue. 3 times Balaam beats her in frustration. What Balaam does not realize is that the donkey can see something he cannot. Standing in the road is a messenger of God, sword drawn, blocking the way. Finally, God opens the donkey's mouth, and she speaks. What have I done to you that you have beaten me these 3 times? Haven't I been your faithful donkey all these years? Have I ever behaved this way before? In other words, you know me. You trust me. Don't you think there might be something you could possibly be missing here? Only then are Balaam's eyes opened, and he finally sees what the donkey had seen all along. In many ways, the donkey is the hero of our story. The rabbis notice something remarkable about this scene. In Midrash Bamidbar Rabbah, they ask, why don't animals generally speak? Their answer is wonderfully funny. If animals could talk, they say, human beings wouldn't stand a chance. After all, look what happened here. The wisest of men was utterly defeated in an argument by a donkey. Imagine if every animal could answer back. Humanity would constantly be put in its place. And I have an animal that does answer back because I have a husky, and it's already demeaning enough. If he could actually speak English, it would be a whole problem. So the rabbi suggests that God mercifully spared us the embarrassment by keeping the mouths of animals closed. Us with our fragile egos. It's a humorous midrash, but beneath the humor lies something deeply true. We humans are constantly tempted to believe that we are the center of the universe, that we know exactly what's going on, that we are in complete control, that if something doesn't make sense to us, then it must not make sense at all. So much of our fear comes from what we cannot control and what we cannot know. We crave certainty. We want to believe that if we just gather enough information, do enough research, work hard enough, or plan carefully enough, we'll understand everything that's happening around us and we'll be able to completely control our own futures. But Balak reminds us that sometimes we are the ones who are blind. Sometimes the truth is standing right in front of us, and we're too convinced of our own perspective to see it. Sometimes wisdom comes from the places we least expect, from another person whose experience is different from our own, from a child, from nature, or apparently from a donkey. Humility is not thinking less of ourselves. It's recognizing that we never see the whole picture. And that means there's always something left to learn. If Balaam had paused before striking the donkey, if he had asked, why is she acting differently today? If he had paid attention, instead of assuming he already knew the answer, he might have seen God's messenger much sooner. That's true for us as well. If we can slow down, as Abby mentioned, if we can loosen our grip on certainty, if we can admit that we don't always have the answers, then perhaps our eyes too can be opened. Perhaps we'll discover that God has been trying to teach us something all along. Being created in the image of God was never meant to convince us that we have nothing left to learn. It was meant to give us the responsibility to keep learning, sometimes from another person, sometimes from the natural world, and every once in a while from a donkey. Shabbat shalom.